Ben sat on his chair watching TV while his girlfriend got ready and put her makeup on. It was her birthday. Well, technically it was the day before, but that still counted as far as she was concerned. Ben offered to take her out to her favorite restaurant because the next night, on her actual birthday, they were going to have a small party for her at their apartment. And so, this night, he thought it would be nice to celebrate just the two of them. They arrived at the restaurant and were seated by the hostess after waiting for a few minutes in the reception area. They began looking at their menus and talking about this and that. Soon after, the waitress came and took their drink orders. After a few more minutes went by, Ben asked his girlfriend what she was thinking of ordering. Then she asked him. They both said they weren't sure yet and went on looking at their menus, continuing to talk. They talked about who was going to come the party the next night and what they still needed to do beforehand to prepare for it. Then there was a little break in their conversation while they focused more seriously on making their final meal decisions. Ben decided what to order before her, turkey tips. He watched his girlfriend as she continued to inspect her menu. She was visibly stressed by the decision. Her brow was tight and her eyes jolted around as she flipped the menu pages back and forth. Ben thought about how funny this was. How she was furiously ruminating over which meal to choose, as if her life depended on it. Such a simple, risk-free choice, he thought, yet it seemed as if it carried the weight of the world on her in that moment. Ben looked around at all the other people in the restaurant. It looked as if about a quarter of them were looking at their menus as well. He wondered how much of everyone's life was spent trying to make decisions like this. How much stress and worry were put on decisions as trivial as what meal to get out of a few similarly good, privileged meals. Then Ben realized that he sort of was just doing the same thing. This suddenly made Ben sort of anxious, as if this thought weirdly reminded him that he was a person, a living thing in the world. And whatever absurdity he was looking at in the restaurant, he was too a part of. As he scanned around the room, he weirdly noticed the droning chatter of all the other restaurant goers, as if his ears pulled the hum of their voices from the background to the foreground of his attention. He thought about how each individual voice made sense on their own, but when heard collectively all at once, they sort of sounded like squawking animal noises, completely indiscernible and bizarre. This made Ben even more anxious. He tried to pull himself out of it. In his head, he told himself to relax over and over. But in this attempt, he found himself thinking about the conversation he was having with himself. He wondered who was telling who to relax. He thought about how he was somewhere inside his head, lodged within the object of his brain, looking out at all these other objects, thinking about them, trying to make sense of it all. He looked down at the chair he was sitting on. He thought about how many people were likely required for it to arrive there under him. He observed the wood frame, the leather skin of the cushion, the pillow material inside of it poking out of a hole, and all the little screws that held it together. He wondered where it all came from. He thought about how he could trace each item back to something, the wood from a tree, the leather from an animal or fabric, the metal from certain rocks in the ground, the chair design from other people, all of it from the planet from some swirling cluster of matter and energy. But then he suddenly became deeply overwhelmed by the idea that he didn't know where this string ended. Or began. That no one really did. He started to feel somewhat claustrophobic and disoriented, somehow disconnected from what was going on around him, yet deeply aware of everything at the same time. The chair almost looked unfamiliar to him as he continued looking at it. He thought about how it sort of just showed up. How everything sort of just showed up. That one day, some amount of time ago, he realized he was Ben and he showed. Another day he learned what chair was, and chairs showed up. Another day he realized he was on this planet and the planet showed up. And this continued on and on with everything he'd ever known, and ever would. This then made Ben wonder what the chair would be if he wasn't there to sit in it. If no one was anywhere to sit in it. He figured it probably wouldn't exist at all. But then he wondered what else wouldn't exist if there was no one to do anything with anything? If with no one to sit, there would be no chairs, then what would there be with no one to think? No one to say what color anything is. What things sound like. What food is. What anything is. Ben suddenly became viscerally aware of the fact that he was looking out at everything through his eyeballs. He thought that surely without any people, there would still remain objects, organizations of matter and energy floating around, but he considered the possibility that with no one to say what purpose any of it had, no one to say what made any one part of it different from any other, then perhaps none of it would really be anything at all. He wondered in this moment if in fact everything he was looking at was actually nothing, but somehow through him, it became everything. That here in this restaurant, he was creating existence as he lived through it, determining what it all meant. And without him, without anyone, everything might as well be the same as nothing. So, are we ready to order? The waitress suddenly interrupted. Ben quickly realized he had slipped lower in his chair and felt a thin layer of sweat covering his forehead, back, and arms. He wasn't sure how much time had passed, but it looked as if his girlfriend was just looking back up from her menu. He felt like he was on the verge of passing out, struggling to properly catch his breath. He looked fine from the outside, however, appearing no more than slightly distracted or tired. His girlfriend said, jokingly to him, "Hey, you there?" Ben paused for a short moment, then looked at her and said, "Yeah. I'm good." With a small laugh. Then he and his girlfriend ordered, ate, and went home. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.